What's up, my movers and shakers? I'm Dave, this is MS Paints, and this is all about how to drag your friends kicking and screaming into the world of Warhammer, although it's more miniature games in general. And so I once again open the floor to my Patreon community to present questions and topics of discussion that we are going to do topics of discussion on today. As always, absolutely you're welcome to drop your opinion down in the comments below about any of these topics we're going to discuss. Nick asks, serious question, I know it's stupidly vague, but what advice would you give to someone with a condition such as MS that wants to get started in the hobby? Any advice on workspace setup, must-have equipment? Brackets, I really hope I don't sound insensitive. You do. Really fucking insensitive, man. Non-serious question. How in shitting crikey is it that you still haven't played Chrono Trigger? The 16-bit soundtrack is worth the price of admission alone. I'm not a 16-bit guy. I'm not a 16-bit guy. I'm not an 8-bit guy. I'm not a 16-bit guy. I'm a 32-bit kind of guy. I am on disc 2 of Chrono Cross, though, so that is something. That has a great soundtrack. And that has a 32-bit soundtrack, which is... So on to the actual serious question you asked, and the topic of discussion first. I would say if you are differently abled and want to get into the hobby, the best way to actually do it is your own way. And kinda, I would say, start the same way everyone else does, and then find out what, your specific quirks with whatever, condition you have, whatever those quirks are and what they present in terms of things that you need to manage. Because absolutely everyone is different. My main thing is that I'm partially blind in one eye, and I have fine motor issues in my right hand and tremors and shakes from MS. Now and again I see that I get lumped into, not in a bad way, I get lumped into conversations about tremors, and they mention me, they mention Mitch from Tyrannosaur, and they mention Jeremy from Black Magic Craft. And interestingly, I've talked to Mitch about it a few times, and our tremors are completely different. we have different advice and different coping mechanisms for that. I don't know specifically about Jeremy. I have watched his video about tremors, and his ways of dealing with it are different to how I deal with it, and some of those are different to how Mitch deals with it. But the overall thing to take away from that is that everyone is different anyway. But when it comes to people being different with their differently abledness, is just near infinite in terms of its variables. It's more one of those issues where you just need to try different stuff and see what fixes you, what works for you. You might by accident discover a new thing that no one's mentioned that makes the hobby work for you better. For me, it was recently getting off energy drinks. I'm very tired now. I don't know if I mentioned it in my last workshop build video, which is this workshop that I made, but I specifically hand built my desks higher than is normally considered acceptable. My dad before he retired, he worked in health and safety and did some stuff in office environments. And I think if he sat at my desks and observed the height of them, he would certainly have some fucking things to say about that. I've experimented with desks at different heights and found that the height that I've set them is the one I need to work at, basically. Not everyone can do that, obviously. So there's things like the yoga blocks, and then there's bricks covered with towels that you can do to elevate your grip and your working space. There's different types of brush grips you can use, things like that. But ultimately, any advice I give would be just experimentation, I think is the word. Because I've tried stuff. People say, oh, have you tried this? And I try it and I'm like, no, that's shit. That doesn't work. So at no point would I suggest something with the notion that it would just fix it. I like to suggest things as suggestions for people to trial and error. Yeah, but be patient with the hobby. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with what might arise in terms of limitations. But limitations, like all limitations, can actually be pushed. So, yeah, be patient with yourself, find your breathing room, and work at the pace you got to work at, I think is the way to go there.
What's up, guys? Tony B here. I ain't gonna lie to you guys, I just smashed Apollo El Pomodoro, and I am fired up and ready to go. I'm clucking crazy. And I'm here to talk to you about, I'm here to talk to you about the Squarespace, guys. Ever thought to yourself, man, I'm such a good chef, but I ain't got no website to tell people what kind of a good chef I am? Me neither, but there's probably one of you out there. Well, now you can, with Squarespace's boundless supply of templates locked and loaded to get you started. That's right, you can pull together a website using templates for portfolios, blogs, vlogs, music, and even recipe pages in just a few minutes. Squarespace cooking with that special sauce. And on top of that, world-class 24-hour customer support means that if you got an issue, Squarespace is cooking up the answers in the kitchen right away. Squarespace got the steak and the sizzle. Steak and sizzle! But that's not all there is to it, guys. Oh no. Squarespace also got templates for restaurants. So if you want to go ahead and get all your food hygiene qualifications real quick, just like that, Squarespace gives you the power to make the magic happen with a web page with menus and contact info for your restaurant, guys. And last but not least, every dish gotta have a signature name, and so does every website. So head on over to the domain acquisition tab, type in the name you want to give your website, and immediately link the page and to the rest of the world. It's just that easy, guys. Squarespace got steak, sizzle, and seasoning. So come on down to the Squarespace steak website and emporium at squarespace.com/MSPaints and use the code MSPaints at checkout to save yourself 10% off your first website subscription or domain. Sizzle! You can take a bite of that steak.
Dr. Bastard. Dr. Bastard has a topic for discussion. Where do you find inspiration for and motivation to complete your hobby projects? I think my inspiration is exactly that. And yeah, it's the inspiration to see a project go from brain to product, which is what it's always been for me. I mean, there's inspiration and then there's focus. And my focus comes from it being a job, which I wouldn't recommend anyone do. So with that, I with the focus, I plan things, I schedule things. I need to get stuff done by certain dates, and I compartmentalize a lot of larger tasks into daily tasks, or even chunks of daily tasks, like 3 to 4 hour blocks. Although sometimes that's quite ambitious. I mean, sure, I don't think people should treat it like a job because it's a hobby, and in theory, you already have a job. So don't do that, because then there's more stress and pressure. But you can take my very sort of flimsy organizational approach if you want, which I mean I just took from Adam Savage, which he in turn took from a guy at ILM. So and I'm sure he took it from someone else as well. This is generally how I organize things. Each one of these is a vague thing that I want to either have done or be in progress by the end of the day. And what's important to note about all these things is that they're parts of larger projects. I can't do the whole project in one day. I can't do it now. Some of them I can't start until 2 weeks' time, but I can do prep for those. You know, there's a print that I need to set going for my Helldivers 2 diorama, which is upcoming. There's prints that I need to make a start on for Fallout Wasteland Warfare, and just little stuff like I need to take the Dark Souls board game home, because at some point at home I need to go through that rule system and figure it out so I can actually talk about it on a video. Obviously none of these are massively relevant to just painting stuff on the workbench. However, what I've done is taken essentially 3 massive fucking projects, and I've broken them down into 5 or 6 things that I can do today on that project, and that is important. Yeah, a lot of it is about compartmentalizing stuff. You're not going to get that army painted in a week, but that's fine. What you can do on Tuesday night when you've got 3 hours free is paint all the belt buckles or do the bases. Things like that may only take half an hour, but that is that thing done. Just get it done, tick the thing off, and then step away from the bench and do something else. That's kind of how I do it when I have to take my work home. Absolutely don't forget to tidy your workspace. Those 2 things sound lame because I've basically said tidy up after yourself, write the fucking list down. But that is kind of how things get done. Of course, if you're not inspired by it anymore, then you're not inspired by it anymore. If you're bored, you're bored. Bin it, do something else. The important thing to remember is that having something done is, assuming your project doesn't involve air recycling and filtration on a spaceship, it doesn't need to be perfect. Backpack Boom Bap. We're going to have to change your fucking username, man. How would you introduce someone to the hobby? Unfortunately, not all of us have access to clubs or friendly local game stores, fligs, who hold their own games nights, which means getting people to hobby with can be tricky. How do you try to convince a person that this hobby might be the one for them? So, prepare to be the host. I think that's the main thing. And work with your friend, or if you're very lucky, friends plural, to see what they actually would like. So with hosting stuff, I'm assuming you're talking about someone who has nada, who has absolutely nothing hobby related that they're going to bring to the table, which is fine. You're probably going to have to be their inroad into the hobby. So if you have if you have spare stuff that you can kind of just very politely give them, that's a good head start. Which means, get the paints out, a few basic paints, gather around the kitchen table, just make it social, make it fun, don't make it work. When it comes to game systems, you'll also have to host those, but also you can house rule a lot of stuff to make it easier to digest and do it in chunks that way. If you know the game systems, that is. But yeah, the most important thing, quite possibly, is the hosting, because miniature gaming is not cheap, and not that I would expect you to, but you absolutely can't expect them to foot the bill on something they've not tried before and that you think they should try. And like I said, not that I think that most people would expect their friend to foot the bill, although I imagine there's probably more than we think there is that would. But, 2-player starter sets are kind of a dime a dozen these days, not necessarily in terms of price, but they are cheaper than the rest of the hobby, if that makes sense. Like, for example, Fallout Wasteland Warfare, which I'm working on at the minute, 6 units of, say, Brotherhood of Steel is the same cost as the Fallout Wasteland Warfare starter set. And the starter set has enough for 2 people to play. It has all the counters, the books, and all that gubbins. But with those starter sets, the 2 of you with 1 box of stuff for the cost of like 60 quid can both play a game, have miniatures, and that's a starting point. But like I said, definitely work out with the friend what appeals to them, because the hobby might appeal to them, but your specific corner of the hobby might not be their thing. It might be that they want to make model railway stuff, and that's entirely fine. Go with them to a model railway shop. You know some stuff about hobby. They don't. Help them get into model railways. Hey, now you're interested in model railways as well. And quite frankly, financially, you're both fucked then. So you've got a lot in common straight away. And more importantly, you would both be getting into a part of the hobby together. You'd both be learning at the same time. And that teacher-pupil dynamic kind of disappears, which could actually probably be, a good thing. Yeah, I would say so. But yeah, find out what they're into. For example, if they are into video games, the Resident Evil miniatures game. There's the Dark Souls board game, which is very miniature heavy. There's the, not Event Horizon. Horizon Zero Dawn. There's a lot out there. There is a lot out there. Star Wars. A lot of people like Star Wars. Not everyone likes Star Wars. Star Wars fans don't even like Star Wars, really. But something like X-Wing. That's reduced to clear in most places these days. And it's the starter set is 3 models. You can get it for as cheap as like £25. If they like Star Wars, you like miniatures games, there's a crossover there, there's an in-way, and you can kind of both have fun from your respective angles. And things like that as well. It's important to remember that the rule systems are designed, a lot of them are designed to be fun. The Dark Souls one doesn't feel like that's designed to be fun. That feels like... But stuff like X-Wing teaches, in a very accessible way, the core mechanics of how a war game works. And the models are painted, which helps. Again, Lord of the Rings, Middle-earth Strategic Battle Operations Simulator by Games Workshop. Not too expensive to collect the older stuff. Fairly easy to paint because it's not a range designed to sell a paint line. It's based on a movie franchise. And that's got the connection there with Lord of the Rings. And you can pick up the first edition rulebook that covers a lot of the basics and a lot of the miniatures in a single book. You can get that second hand for like £3. And that is designed for a younger, more casual audience. And I don't mean that in a bad way. But that rule system, for example, allows people a pretty brisk and fun inroad into the hobby. And, Warhammer's made some good strides in terms of its not support games, specialist games. Those are becoming more and more accessible, like Warcry, Aeronautica, things like that. Yeah, so there's kind of like, it's essentially a series of compromises, not compromises as such, but they could feel like compromises when you want to get a friend into the hobby. And yeah, the most valuable thing is that you understand what they want from the hobby more than anything else. Thanks massively to my wonderful Patreon community who put some of these questions and topics of discussion forward. If you'd like to ask your own questions, not that I can guarantee they'll make it into a video, or be part of that wonderful little community, check out the links at the end of the video and the links in the description down below to see how you can join the community. With that said, Chainsaw Warrior. Cheers, I'm out of here.